John chapter 9, the encounter between Jesus and a man born blind. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been born blind. His followers asked him, "Teacher, whose sin caused this man to be born blind? His own sin or his parents' sin?" Jesus answered, "It is not this man's sin or his parents' sin that made him be blind. This man was born blind so that God's power could be shown in him. While it is daytime, we must continue doing the work of the one who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. When I am in the world, I am the light of the world." After Jesus said this, he spat on the ground and made some mud with it, put the mud in the man's eyes. Then he told the man, "Go and wash in the pool of Siloam." Siloam means sent. So the man went, washed, and came back seeing. Now the story continues. In fact, it continues the whole of the chapter, so you know that the author, John, is saying something that's significant and important. And the story is split into 7 scenes. John has this amazing affinity for the number 7. So in scene 1, Jesus performs this miracle to a man who is born blind. Scene 2, from verses 8 to 12, is the account given by the blind man himself. Scene 3, the Pharisees are questioning him about his healing because they can see him, and it's a Sabbath when he's been healed, from verses 13 to 17. And then they ask him, and then in the next scene, scene 4, they ask his parents about him, from 18 to 23. And then they go back to him again, and then they end up throwing him out. It says they cast him out. And there's also a suggestion that his parents were afraid of being cast out of the synagogue. And then scene 6, Jesus finds him and speaks to the man, verses 35 to 38. And the last scene, Jesus turns on the Pharisees and reproves them. And he makes this claim about spiritual blindness and spiritual sight, which makes the whole thing quite stylized, and that's the sort of point of it. Do you see? Do you really see? And it's a verb that runs right the way through John's Gospel. Who are those who see? Who are those who are blind? Well, this man was born blind, so he begins in a desperate condition. And one of the roles of the expected Messiah was that he was going to give sight to the blind. And in Isaiah 61, the recovery of sight for the blind was one of the hallmarks of the coming Messiah. The one that they expected to come would be the one who set prisoners free and who made blind eyes see. So this was all very much par for the course, wasn't it? So when they asked the man, "What do you think about Jesus?" he said, "He's a prophet," or possibly the prophet who is due to come. In fact, again, in chapter 9, you've got a sequence of words about who Jesus is. And it's interesting that this man is born blind. He meets Jesus. He has mud put on his eyes. He goes away, and he never sees Jesus. He never sees him until later in the story. He walks off with the mud on his eyes. He's sent to the pool. He goes, he washes, and he comes back seeing. And maybe if we see anything of Jesus, it's because he did it, right? It's because he did it. If we see anything in Jesus and what Jesus is doing, it's because he saw us first. It's a strong word about the sovereignty of God. And then they say, well, is this blindness a punishment? And Jesus says, no, this is to show the glory of God. Now, this is mysterious, I grant you that. But I think the emphasis is to say that God's glory is centre stage. Even to the exclusion of our condition. We are the spokes of the bicycle wheel. And nothing makes sense until we're connected to that centre. Jesus is the centre. And God demands, first place, the preeminence, hub of our life. And all the other things fit into that. And he says, even your condition, even your desperate condition, is secondary to his glory. That's what the Bible says. So the man goes to the pool blind and comes back seeing. and it was a Sabbath. Now, even in the law, works of necessity and mercy were allowed to be done. In fact, my main job of opening blind eyes happens on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees wanted to put this miracle down. They wanted to discredit Jesus in some way. But grace is felt most by the disgraceful, isn't it? Grace is felt by the people who need it the most. And the people who feel they don't need it don't receive it. And you also hear a little bit of a slight class thing going on. You know, it's like when they said, isn't this just the son of the carpenter? They said, who is this Jesus? Are you sure you were born blind? I said, yeah. Are you sure? What do you mean? What do you think about Jesus? And the thing is, at the bottom line, you come back to what God has done for you, don't you? You don't come back to theory or doctrine or ideas or even emotions. They're all part of it. But you come back to what Jesus has done for you. You come back to the fact of a changed life. Once I was blind, now I see. And no one can take that away from you. What Jesus, John Wesley was saying, I don't want to know whether you're entirely sanctified or filled with the Spirit. Just show me. Do you have a better temper than you used to have? Are you still getting irritable? He said, show me the facts of a changed life. The fruit shows the tree is good. And so Jesus seeks him out, and then he sees Jesus for the first time. Isn't that great? He sees him and he worships him. Who is this Son of Man that I might believe? He says, I am he who speaks to you. He says, Lord, I believe. And he sees him for the first time, physically and spiritually. And Jesus is the deciding point. He is the crisis. The word crisis means decision point. You remember the Billy Graham hour of decision. And he is the crisis point, not just for the man born blind, but for the Pharisees. And then they round on Jesus saying, are you saying that we are blind? And he says, if you said you were blind, you'd now be able to see. But now that you claim to see, you are indeed blind. He's sort of turning it around. He offers sight to the blind, and he offers a slight to the blinded. He offers blindness to those who think they're good enough. It's just another wonderful picture of the grace of God breaking into our darkness, giving us light. But you remember all the way through John's Gospel, he came to his own, and his own received him not. But as such as who did receive him, he gave them the authority to be called children of God. And here we are, folks. God bless you today.